All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to tackle something that's super important for anyone building integrations, Atlassian's OAuth 2.0, or as you'll often hear it called, 3LO. And don't worry, we're going to make this easy by thinking of it as a secure valet key for your digital life. So, let's start with the big question, right? You've got this awesome new app you want to connect to your Jira or Confluence, but there is no way you're just going to hand over your password. I mean, nobody does that. So, how do you let it in? How do you give it just enough access to do its job, but nothing more?
Okay, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about why we even need access without passwords. Then, we'll get into the three-legged handshake. After that, the authorization code flow, the real meat of it. Then we'll look at making secure API calls, and we'll wrap up with managing your app's access.
All right, Section 1, access without passwords. This is all about the why, the whole reason this stuff even exists. And the solution really is OAuth 2.0. But honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is this. It's like a secure valet key. Think about it. When you give a valet your key, they can't just go joyriding or rifle through your glove compartment. Nope. That key can only start the car and maybe unlock the doors. It has super specific, limited permissions. And that is exactly what we're aiming for with our apps.
Okay, on to our next part, the three-legged handshake. Sounds kind of formal, right? But all it means is that there are three main players in this whole process. Let's meet them. So here's the official definition. It's a standard, which just means a bunch of smart people agreed this is the best way to do it. But look at the really important bits here. On a user's behalf and with their explicit permission. This is huge. The app can't do anything on its own. It's only ever acting for you, the user, and only after you've clearly said, yep, you have my permission. And here they are, our three legs, perfectly explained by our valet analogy. First, there's you, the user. You're the car owner. Then you have the app. That's our valet, ready to do a job. And finally, you've got the Atlassian site, whether it's Jira or Confluence. That's the high-tech car itself that we need to protect.
All right, now we're getting into the real nuts and bolts. Section 3, the authorization code flow. I like to think of this as a kind of authorization dance, a set of specific steps that everyone has to follow perfectly.
Now, from your point of view as the user, this whole dance is, well, it's dead simple. You've probably done it 100 times without even thinking about it. You click Connect, you get bounced over to that familiar Atlassian page, you click Approve, and boom, you're right back in the app. It just works. But of course, behind the curtain, there's a lot more happening. So the app kicks things off by asking for authorization. You log in and say yes. But here's the really clever part. Atlassian doesn't just hand over the valet key right away. No. First, it gives the app something else, a temporary, single-use thing called an authorization code. The app then has to take that code and go back to Atlassian to trade it in for the actual key, which is the access token.
And that first request the app makes, it's basically a long URL that's just packed with info. The client ID, that's your app's unique ID, kind of like its license plate. Scope is super important. That's you telling the valet exactly what they can do. You can read my Jira issues, but you absolutely cannot delete my projects. The redirect URI is just the address where Atlassian should send you back when you're done. And state, this one's a crucial security guard. It's like a secret code word to make sure no one's trying to hijack the conversation.
So let's just hammer this point home, because it's the key to the whole thing. The authorization code is not the key. Think of it more like a claim check. It's proof that you said yes, but you can't do anything with it. It's temporary, you use it once, and it's gone. The access token, that is the actual valet key. It's what the app uses to open the door and do the work. It's reusable, but only for a little while.
Which leads us right into Section 4, making secure API calls. So, our app, our valet, has the key. Now what? How does it actually use it?
Well, the very first thing it needs is something called a cloud ID. You see, you might have access to a bunch of different Jira sites, right? So the cloud ID is like the specific address. It tells Atlassian, hey, I don't want to talk to any Jira site. I want to talk to this specific one.
So how does the app get that ID? It's simple. It makes a quick API call to a special place called the Accessible Resources Endpoint. Atlassian then sends back a list of all the sites you've said are okay to access. The app just looks through that list, finds the one it needs, and pulls out that ID value. Easy.
Once it's got that clouded, building the final URL to talk to Jira is like following a recipe. You start with the base API address,
You add the part for the product, in this case, Jira. You slot in that clouded you just got, and then you just tack on the specific command you want to run at the end.
And now for the final step, making the actual call. The app takes that access token, our valet key, and puts it in the request's authorization header. It presents it as a bearer token. This is just the technical way of saying, hey server, let me in. The person who bears this token has permission.
Okay, last section. Let's talk about managing the app's access. This is super important because, for security reasons, these valet keys are not designed to last forever.
Right, so those access tokens, they expire, usually after an hour or so. Now, it would be a huge pain if you had to log in and approve the app every single hour, right? That's where refresh tokens come in. A refresh token is a special, long-lasting token with only one purpose: to go get a brand new access token when the old one dies.
And Atlassian adds an extra layer of security here, which is really smart. They use something called rotating refresh tokens. What this means is, every time the app uses its refresh token, it gets back not just a new access token, but also a new refresh token. The old one stops working immediately. It's a fantastic security feature that makes it much harder for a stolen token to be used for long.
So where do you, the developer, manage all this stuff? It all happens in the Atlassian Developer Console. This is your command center. It's where you find your app's ID in secret, where you set up that callback URL, where you decide which permissions or scopes you're going to ask for. Basically, it's where you control everything about your app's connection.
So there you have it, OAuth 2.0. This three-legged process might seem complex at first, but it's really just a super robust and secure way to build amazing integrations without ever having to ask for a user's password. It's the handshake that powers this entire connected ecosystem. So now that you know how it works, what are you going to build next?